Society Matters.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Legacy Chronicles. My name is Zachary Graulich. I'm the Assistant Director of Education here at hmTV, and today I'm joined by second-generation survivor Vivian Rick. Vivian, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. So, Vivian, I would love to start with, how about you share with me and all of our listeners a little bit about your family? So, who your parents were, where they came from, and how did they survive the Holocaust?
Okay, my father was born in Podgorj, Krakow. It must be a town in Krakow or something. His parents were, my grandfather was born in Holland, and my grandmother was born also in Podgorj. My grandmother and grandfather lived in Vienna, but for World War I, they went back to Holland, and they lived on the same street as Anne Frank.
Wow.
Of course, a different time. But,
Yeah, of course.
And they waited it out, and then they came back to Vienna. Okay. My grandmother went back to her father's house to have my father in Podgorj. My grandfather's house was like a city block, and he had on one end, they lived there, and on one end he had his bank, on the other end he built a shul.
Wow.
My uncle had told me there were like maybe 30 apartments in that one building. My father was a lawyer. He was also studying to be a doctor, but his parents felt, because wealthy people thought that you get your hands dirty. So he had to stop anyway because of the Nazis.
Okay.
But he was already older. He was the head of a law department for a forerunner of a credit card company. We don't really know what company. And of course, he was let go. And pretty soon he saw the handwriting on the wall, and he said to his parents, "I'm leaving." And they said, "You're crazy." And, like this, this is going to blow over and all that. And he just said, "I'm going." And his parents, also very wealthy, and sat, in fact, with Freud at the cafes. My grandfather was friendly with Freud.
Wow.
And, this isn't going to happen. And he and his middle brother, Carl, 25, decided that they were leaving. I don't know the whole story. My cousin doesn't know it either. They also had a third brother, Fritz, who was 14 and a half. Parents wouldn't let him go with them. They walked to Switzerland.
Wow.
It's funny because I thought maybe, after hearing a lot of things about the Ritchie boys, I kind of thought, and so did other people, that perhaps he was one. From what I've gathered so far, he wasn't.
Okay.
But my uncle did know that he wrote an underground paper, and I guess they somehow, circulated different areas. He got to Switzerland, and somehow he got to Kingston, New York. Don't know who his sponsor was, but I know that he arrived in Kingston. I know the address because I stood in front of the house. I mean, nobody was there to say anything to me. But I think he wanted to be there. It's just a feeling of mine that because he was a lawyer, it was close to the capital. And maybe he thought somehow, I have no clue what.
Right.
A total guess. Then he enlisted in the army. And he spoke, it's either 5 or 9 languages. I don't know, because my grandmother, spoke many also. He was an interpreter. He was a warrant officer. But first he was in Hawaii. And I guess his tour was over, and they sent him home. I don't know anything about this other than that as well. And when he went home is when, he didn't want to go home. When he was home, that's when Pearl Harbor happened. So it's like, in my mind, he was saved again.
Yeah.
Then he must have been called back up. I've tried to find out, but the records were burnt. So he went back, and I do know at that time he was a warrant officer and an interrogator, and he went throughout the Rhineland. He went to North Africa. He was in Paris. He was all over. Somehow he was on leave, and he met my mother. They must have seen each other in Vienna in social clubs, because my mother was 11 years younger than he was.
Okay.
But they must have recognized each other, or maybe they had people they knew, in common. And they saw each other on a New York subway while my mother was going to work. And that was basically it, and they got married. And he wrote her lots of letters and all that kind of stuff. When he came home, they went to Arizona. They lived in Arizona for a while because he went to officers candidate school. And at some point, he was asked to be a Nuremberg lawyer. It had to be before 54 because he died in August of 54. So my mother said, I will not go back.
Yeah.
And so they did not go. Okay. He did. I know that unofficially he was one of the first troops to go into Vienna because he was looking for his parents, who were so well known, but they were nowhere to be found. There was no information. It was way too early. My mother, who said very little, did say that he was never the same after. So he was also very instrumental in calling my grandparents. From what I understand, he badgered them to get Fritz, the youngest, out. And once he heard about the Kindertransport, he really went to it. And they finally, I guess, for what they saw, they finally put him on. And he lived in England until he was 96. He died of COVID. And he would go back to his school every year in Vienna. Wow. In fact, his name is... there are certain names under plexiglass. He would go back every year and speak as a survivor to the kids. But my father was instrumental in getting him on that, really, I guess he probably tortured them. Let's get him on there. And my grandparents, the last that was known was that they had gone, we think, to Hungary, where, who knows what happened. Right. But nobody, because I tried also Red Cross 12 years apart for a very long time to find out. There's no information. So they were either shot on the way, or maybe they were rounded up in 44 in Auschwitz. So that's basically my father. My mother also lived in Vienna. She was born in Vienna. She had a brother and a sister. And my grandparents, my grandfather came from Odessa. He was from a middle-class family. His father was a teacher. He did not want to go to the Tsar's army, so he took himself to Paris and studied design and clothing. He came to Vienna after Paris and opened a store, a haute couture store, clothing store. My grandmother, who came from a town I can't even say, I have to look at it, in Poland, I guess Tarnopol was the closest.
Okay.
That I can think of. She had 8 brothers and sisters, and the parents, they must have all come to Vienna. I don't really know that either, except that the grandparents were buried there because I did take a trip then. So they must have all come. They owned a cattle and a plantation, apparently, and in Tarnopol, Poland. I know that my grandmother went to textile school in Germany in college. And so she opened a clothing store, a seamstress store. I don't know what she did. Yeah. She was more of a businesswoman than a designer. She was not a designer. So they had stores across the street from each other. So obviously they met. Yeah. They married. They condensed. They had one store. And they lived around the corner from the store. And... their apartment was on the 5th floor. Excuse me. The landlord lived on the 6th floor. So he summered. He went wherever he went. And in the interim, once the Nazis really came in, they moved into his apartment as regional headquarters. I don't think that they knew, and I don't totally understand this. My grandfather's name was Manasseh Zimmerman with 2 Z's. I'm sorry, with 2 M's. I think he was a Christian socialist. Does that sound right? I don't really know. This is a while back.
Yeah.
Changed his name to Johann and took away one of the M's.
Okay.
So that it should sound more Christian is what I was told. I don't know.
Okay.
And so I don't know that these Nazis knew that they were Jewish at the time. I don't know. And I don't know the exact year. I don't know. So they would tell my mother and my aunt were, pretty young teenagers. And so they sometimes would say to them, don't go out today. There's going to be an action. Mm-hmm. Okay, so they didn't go out. They would send my aunt out because she was very tiny. So they would send her out for food, thinking that nobody would bother her. I was told, the one thing I was told by my cousin was that she witnessed a priest being thrown from a building. Okay. My mother, my uncle told me later, was very defiant in a way in where, of course, Vienna is a very cultural city and they were very involved in music and arts. And my mother would say, they want to see what a beautiful Jewish girl looks like? I'm going to show them. And she was very defiant. And my uncle, he would be in amazement. How is she doing this? Why is she doing this, Mm-hmm. And even as I knew her, people would be like, can I help you? She just had this attitude about her.
So she would just walk down the street?
She would just walk down the street. No stars were worn. It wasn't at that point,
right.
And she would just go about her business, I guess, doing whatever it was she wanted to do.
Yeah.
And she was going to design school in gymnasium, I guess. Mm-hmm. And then at some point, of course, and I know that they put their, they applied to go to the States. Mm-hmm. And that my grandfather's sister had already been in the States. So they were going to be their sponsor.
Okay.
But I know that it took them 2 years before they were able to, get out. And during that time, which I never knew, my mother never told me. In fact, when I went to Vienna with my uncle, my father's brother, she didn't want me to go. She was very upset that I was going, very upset. And of course, when I came back, she wanted to know where I went and what I did and all that. And it really helped me to see Vienna and really explain to me who she was and why she was the way she was. We had a white and gold formal living room that we had to be invited to sit in. Mm-hmm. No plastic covers, mm-hmm. but it was like a total Viennese room. Mm-hmm. And just everything was gold and white in her house, with chandeliers. And I went to the bathrooms in Vienna and certain hotels and stuff, and there was crystal all over. My mother would be sitting and drinking her orange juice out of crystal champagne glasses.
Yeah.
My mother was different. That's,
Yeah.
But she never told me. And I found out through my cousin that I guess after Kristallnacht, obviously the store was gone. And they had to move in to a one-bedroom apartment that they shared with another family. And it was rented by the pharmacist who knew my grandfather, from down the block or whatever. And I said, well, how did you survive? And he said, we helped Grandpa, whether with deliveries or with clothing, and we learned English because they knew they were going, which I thought was rather smart. And I guess because people couldn't take money with them, so they spent it on nice clothing. And that's how they survived, and they had money until it was time for them to leave. My grandmother, my uncle told me too, they were going, they're going on the train to leave, and some woman said, I know you're going to Brooklyn. Please, can you she had some jewelry. I don't know how she had it, but whatever. Could you take this jewelry with you to Brooklyn? And, and my grandmother looked at her and said, you see these 3 children? Yes. These are my jewels. No, I can't. So they came to Brooklyn, and after a few weeks, I guess they couldn't live together. 2 balabustas. My great aunt was a very strong personality. And they moved to the Bronx, and they I guess I don't think they had a store. I don't recall any store, but they did make a living with tailoring and such. So I do remember that. And things we knew as children, they moved out to Shirley, Long Island. There was nothing in Shirley, like zip, nothing.
Yeah.
And they had a few lots. They had that they kept 2, like they carved out 2 and 3 they left all wooded. And they had a nice house, and, it was very, very nothing. There was nobody and nothing there. And they gardened, they had vegetables, anything you could grow, grew real nice. Very, very pleasant memories. But my grandmother always walked around with a siddur, always. They were Orthodox. Not a word was ever said, ever, about anything. My cousins and I, we would go and visit, with my aunt and my uncle. My Uncle Joe lived in Connecticut, and he was a doctor, and they didn't get there very often. But my aunt, who lived in Long Beach, and my mother, then when remarried, lived in Queens. And so we would go like every Sunday, and we just knew as kids. We didn't know why, but we just knew. Couldn't ask them anything. They would be speaking in German, which we eventually learned, but the Kinder, and then they'd be quiet, and they talked totally about other things. Yeah. So we knew that something, but we didn't know what. We didn't have a clue. Right. That's...
Wow. So you knew that your parents were survivors.
Yes.
You knew there were survivors in your family. So it was always something that you knew, but you didn't really know much about it, I guess.
I don't even think I knew the word Holocaust.
Okay.
I don't think I knew anything until I was in high school.
Okay.
I knew in my gut, but I didn't know what. I mean, obviously, she had an accent. My family had accents. They spoke different languages, But I didn't know. I guess I was also, the idea that my father died when I was so young was a trauma in and of itself for both my mother and myself. So whatever happens in the interim, I was always with family. It was always,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Right.
I didn't know.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting.
I don't know if it just popped up one day inside, but there was always something inside me.
Right.
Always.
So obviously you go through your life. Eventually, somewhere along the line, you do understand really what that all means and where all this stuff comes from. So tell me then, when did you decide that Holocaust education was something that you were passionate about?
When I worked, I would a lot of times read in the papers, Holocaust survivor needs a ride, or Holocaust survivor something, or some temple is having this and that. And all of a sudden, when I had my children, it became extremely important for me to have them go to Hebrew school. I wanted to go to Hebrew school when I was younger. My mother wouldn't let me go. In fact, my mother, being this very fancy lady, would light candles every Friday night and buy flowers every Friday night and say prayers every Friday night, but she never invited me to say them with her. And I was the oldest. I was 10, 14 years older than my siblings. And I don't know why I didn't question it. I just thought it was Friday night and she was getting dressed up for my stepfather. I don't know what I thought. And I never questioned her because I guess that was our thing. We couldn't ask anything.
Yeah.
And she once in a blue moon, she would say something in German that was, if she heard something on the news, it was very derogatory, But she really didn't say anything. And it was very much about just living in the moment, I think. I really believe that she stuck her head in the sand, kind of,
Yeah.
And that was, as I got older, much older, I kind of realized she had every right to do that.
Yeah,
because I don't know what she saw and what she experienced.
Yeah, absolutely. And you just wanted to make sure that your kids had the opportunities that you didn't have, that you wanted to have, but you felt you couldn't.
Right.
So tell me then, how did you make your way here at hmTC? Because you've been here for a while.
16 years.
Yeah. So tell me, how did that happen?
Again, I just felt I've always felt, I was also involved, something called me to Kabbalah. And I did a lot of reading and a lot of tikkun olam. Mm-hmm. And in my 6th grade autograph book, do you even know what that is?
Of course I do.
I noticed my motto at that point was live and let live.
Okay.
And I have always been like that. Mm-hmm. And something, I guess, I just must have been more aware of Holocaust. You know, again, like my head must have opened up rather than shut down. I must have suppressed a lot of things.
Yeah.
And it just became like, people need to know this. Why don't people know this? Yeah. Why didn't I have this earlier on, you know? Mm-hmm. And so one of my friends, Al Musafi, was here already. Mm-hmm. So, and I knew he was going because we, discussed things. And I just, as soon as I retired, I think that next Monday I was here.
Yeah.
Or whenever the meeting
course.
was. And it's just, especially I see children now and they're so stuck in their own places that they don't, and I mean, I know, children have to grow up and they have all kinds of roads to travel, but with this social media, to me, it's extremely frightening.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So you're one of our docents here. As you said, you've been here for 16 years, so you've given countless tours to students, adults, teachers, etc. So tell me, for you, what is it like to be able to share that history with the students, the history that is so connected to your family and so much of frankly, the trauma in your family that, as you said, you really suppressed for a long time? What is it like to share that history with them?
I tell them, I'm a second gen, and I tell them about my father's story, and I tell them about my mother's story as much as I can. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, you throw me out. No. I take a long time. But I want them to know not only the history, because the dates don't really, mean anything to them. I want it to be very personal for them. I want them to feel like I'm talking about that it could be you. Mm-hmm. And that they have to know who they are. And they have to realize what it means to be a person from anywhere. And that we're all the same. And they just have to know that like, because somebody says something, it's not the truth. Yeah. I mean, like, go use your brain, find out. You're going to be with you forevermore. Yeah. So go find out who you are. And then think about what it means to be who you are, to be who anybody is. And that religion is, everybody wants to be themselves and wants to express their feelings and have their say. So does everyone else.
Absolutely.
If that makes any sense.
Absolutely. So you obviously speak about your family, as you said, when you give these tours. And I'm sure that's extremely meaningful for you to be able to share, certain stories or anecdotes, bits and pieces of your family's history, both your father and your mother, with these students. So tell me, why do you feel that it's so important that you do this work? Because I know it's not easy. I can see it right now. It's not easy for you to talk about it. So why do you do it?
I owe it to my family. I owe it especially to my grandparents. I feel very strongly about that. I owe it to 6 million people who could have been who knows what.
Yeah, exactly. It's a call to action that I think many 2Gs, 3Gs, et cetera, and even just people in the world who maybe they're not descendants, but they feel that responsibility. Myself, I feel that responsibility, and I'm not a 2G or a 3G or any G. But I feel that responsibility. I feel that call to action because I do owe it to the 6 million and to everybody, to everyone in the world, to promote tolerance, to promote Holocaust education, to make sure that people understand. And it's not easy. It's not an easy thing to talk about, especially when you have that personal connection. So I commend you for doing that because I know it's not easy. It wasn't easy for you to come here 16 years ago, and it's not easy for you to come here today. But you keep coming back because you know how important and crucial it is for this message to get out there. And so I have to just personally thank you from person to person, educator to educator. Thank you for doing this and for doing what you do. And I know, like I said, it's not easy, but I really am in such admiration of you for being here today and having this conversation that I know is not an easy one either. So really, thank you so much, Vivian, for being here today.
Zachary, thank you too for all you do.
My pleasure. To all of our listeners, thank you so much for being here. As always, we really appreciate your support. You can find more episodes of Legacy Chronicles and any of our other hmTV podcasts at hmtcli.org or anywhere where you listen to your podcasts.